All right. Welcome everyone from anywhere in the world, tourists anywhere in this world, to another episode of Service Science Online Forum. My name is Tom Tan, hosting today's online forum from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. Today, we are so delighted to have the Bernard T. Ferrari Professor Tinglong Dai from Johns Hopkins University. Tinglong is an expert and working in the forefront of healthcare, AI, and service, global supply chain and service
Anybody
systems.
want to hear the
Today,
healthcare?
we are going to talk about
It's going to be interesting.
healthcare operations and AI. This is the exciting area because technology and decision making meet, and the outcomes of this can matter about our life and death. Game plan.
Yeah.
Here's our game plan for today. Professor Dai will start with a brief 10-minute overview of how AI has been applied in healthcare operations. His focus will be on some concrete examples. After that, Tinglong and I will have a moderated conversation covering three areas: decision-making and human AI collaboration, productivity and unintended consequences. And then we're going to take a forward-looking view and talk about the future of research and policy. We'll leave the last 15 minutes for question and answers from the audience. A very few quick ground rules before we begin. Please stay on mute unless you are invited to speak so that we don't distract each other. And please feel free to use the chat anytime to share your thoughts and questions. I'll keep an eye on it. And don't hesitate to use reaction or emojis to make our session just a little bit lively. All right, without further ado, please help me and welcome Professor Tinglong Dai with his episode, Would You Trust a Doctor Who Uses ChatGPT? Tinglong, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for the very, very nice introduction. Thank you for having me here. And good morning, everyone. I know you have better things to do on Friday morning, and I appreciate you choose to invest your time listening to me, and I also want to learn from you. So I'm going to quickly share my screen, and Tom, if you could give me the privilege. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to give everyone a really quick overview about my perspective. This is going to be, so we said 10 minutes. This could be slightly longer. I cannot promise. Will be exactly 10 minutes.
Do you have a measure or something like that, maybe? Or anything that's a fixed, like a rod, a fixed length? I'm trying to hang some things. I don't want to be pushing.
Everyone, please stay on mute unless
So
you're asked to
can
speak.
you
Thank you very much.
try just mute everyone and then just
like a
let
cable and
Tinglong?
just
Oh, a cable. That's actually not bad. Something. Like
I cannot help mute everyone as the host.
I mean, I don't cable if you want.
Do you have a cable?
I'm good.
Hold it for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
I'll
use
do
it. Yeah, just something. He's like a measuring length.
Right.
Perfect. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, looks like we are peaceful and quiet. Okay, so I have this title. This title over here is like a little hook. This is more than just ChatGPT, but let me just start by saying that I have been a passionate advocate for using AI in healthcare for a long time. We have done study using AI to improve physician productivity. We have been trying to look at ways to improve uptake of AI tools in physician practice. But nevertheless, even with everything I have said, I must say over the past year, also the pace of AI in healthcare has been absolutely incredible. I said this is beyond anyone's wildest imagination, to the extent that 1 year ago, if you ask me about uptake of AI, I would probably tell you it's still kind of slow. We're still struggling. But now I will give you a very different answer. I would say that I cannot think of any hospital that is not using some form of AI, especially generative AI. When you think about generative AI in healthcare, there are basically 5 most important use cases. I want to start with ambient scribe AI. This is probably the most popular kind of Gen AI solution used by hospitals across the world, especially in the United States. So by that, what I meant was that when you see a doctor, your conversations these days are being recorded, transcribed, and that used to generate visit summary, and in many cases also connected to other functions of the healthcare operations. For example, revenue and coding part. So the emphasis about using generative AI in healthcare has shifted from improved physician well-being, patient outcomes, to revenue optimization in many ways. So hospitals these days, they can use ambient scribe AI to automatically connect to the revenue and the coding part of their operations. And then there's also patient communication part. And doctors receive many messages from patients. In many hospitals these days, when they open their inboxes, the replies have already been drafted for them, right? And so that's automatic drafts. That's one function. The other application would be that you use Gen AI to draft easy to understand communication with the patients. One application or one extension for that would be forms and disclosures, right? So if you are going to a hospital, you are undergoing any operations and surgery, you are asked to sign forms, disclosures. Most time we have no idea what we're signing, right? But these days, with the help of large language models, suddenly all these forms, the disclosures start to make sense to us. And last one, I also highlighted using different font color is clinical decision support. Is that more and more hospitals start offering this kind of tools built out with generative AI to help physicians to get a second opinion or help them get additional sources or get references from literature. So these are the 5 key use cases. Obviously, from my perspective, I care a lot more about what's really going on, what's getting a lot of momentum, which would be ambient scribe AI, but also care about what's really touching the core of medicine, which is clinical decision support. So at Johns Hopkins, like many other academic medical centers, we are subscribing to a wide variety of generative AI tools, and we make them available to practitioners to use. So for example, here I'm showing Hopkins AI Lab, which is actually provides tool access to ChatGPT, to Claude, to Meta. The tool itself is HIPAA compliant, meaning that it's appropriate for sensitive data, including PHI and PII, meaning actually you can actually use sensitive patient data in such user interfaces without worrying about violating HIPAA. And so this was actually the key motivation of the study I conducted with a few Hopkins colleagues. And this study called Peer Perception of Clinicians Using Generative AI in Medical Decision Making. In this particular study, the question we ask our colleagues are basically about the following. We basically try to understand their own usage of generative AI in their practice. And if they think AI is useful for their decision making. And we also ask them to read a story about a doctor who uses AI in practice and try to get the assessment of that quality of care. So we have, so this was a randomized survey. There were 3 arms. In the control arm, is a story about a doctor who relies solely on own expertise for diagnosis and treatment planning. And then there's Gen AI arm, where this doctor uses AI for guidance in making clinical decisions. And then we also have Gen AI verified group, where the doctor consults AI for guidance in making clinical decision, but frame it to the patient as a verification tool. across all the three scenarios, the decision is identical, the outcome is identical. There was no difference in terms of anything else, other than the fact that so ChatGPT was mentioned during the second and third arms. So then we ask our clinical colleagues at Hopkins to evaluate the quality of care, the quality of service. So what we found, the key finding here is that using AI alone triggers a peer penalty. So specifically, when we ask people to evaluate the doctor's clinical skills, we found that in the control arm, it was 6 out of 7. So the scale is on 1 to 7. Whereas in GenAI condition, it was 4 out of 7. So basically, using AI triggers a 2+ point drop in perceived clinical skill when peers see a doctor using GenAI as a decision-making tool. And if we frame AI as verification tool, it helps, but doesn't completely eliminate the penalty. Then in addition to clinical skills, we also look at competence, we look at healthcare experience, the results are remarkably consistent. And ironically, if you ask physicians about their perceived usefulness of GenAI, they almost all consider GenAI to be useful. It's just to what degree is useful. Then this got us to think why this is happening. So there are a variety of theories in the literature. One theory is advice-taking theory, meaning that when you rely on external input for advice, that can trigger a penalty on perceived competence. And then there's attributional discounting, meaning observers may attribute a physician's success more to the AI tool and less to the physician's actual abilities. Then we also have this reputational thickening theory, and this is related to my 2020 paper with my marketing colleague, Shubangshu. This was published in Marketing Science. In this paper, we reported this phenomenon that a doctor who uses diagnostic testing, which includes conventional tools and also AI tools, could be considered as inferior doctor. And so the key finding from this paper I just showed you was that although clinicians clearly perceive GenAI technologies as beneficial for optimal medical decision-making, they evaluate their peers who utilize such technologies as low in clinical skills, less effective in providing optimal healthcare experience, and less competent. So that's really, really concerning. That's really troubling. And so I share my paper with my colleagues around the world. So one of the colleagues was actually here, Professor Chris Mayer, who happens to be working on similar research. So we exchanges for ideas. So he shared this slide with me. His current view is that using AI risks worsening physician outcomes in wide variety of metrics in terms of stress, burnout, disengagement, skill erosion, not to mention disappearance. Disappearance obviously is one of the things that people worry about, people spend a lot of time worry about. But there is also bigger crisis, which is a system trust crisis. So we know that Americans have a low confidence in our healthcare systems. You're looking at only 33% confidence in our healthcare system. And then you also look at our trust over these AI tools. We know this famous United Healthcare, they have a 90% error rate. That's even worse than random guessing, right? Much worse random guessing. 90% error rate in terms of denying patient claims. So which triggered me and a few colleagues here at Hopkins to look into trust in AI assisted healthcare systems. But on the other hand, we also look at AI's trust in humans, because fundamentally, when we talk about AI, we're really talking about humans, right? It's not so much about AI. It's about how we develop AI, how we use AI, how we perceive the use of AI. Actually matters even more to our service experience in healthcare systems. And there is also liability issue, which I've been working on with my colleague, Dr. Shubangshu Singh. Part of effect that we calculated in this recent public paper in JMR was that if doctors feel like when they use AI, they could be held accountable for misdiagnosis, then they may be hesitant to use AI, even when AI can help them a lot, right? So they use AI when they feel confident AI will support them. And in some way, we are creating this kind of echo chamber because of the potential legal liability consequences. And so I think I should, stop here. And I always wish people, may AI be with you, and look forward to the conversation with Tom and also with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Tinglong. You walked us through some concrete applications of AI in healthcare, and you mentioned trust and perceived skills issues. So let's focus on the decision room where AI and humans work together. So in your opinion, how does trust develop between AI and humans?
Very good. I really like to use the word between. Yeah. So I like to think of trust. I like to think about human AI interaction overall as a bi-directional relationship. Because anytime we talk about human AI interaction, we like to think about how humans perceive AI. But there is also another direction, which is how AI perceive humans. This may sound very crazy, but let me give you a concrete example, which is in the case of self-driving cars. When you design the system, one of the key considerations is that can AI system trust the human being operating the vehicle is a toddler, right? Or is someone under influence, being influenced by drugs or by alcohol, right? Because if that's the case, then you shouldn't trust the humans. You shouldn't trust the human intervention. You should actually take more aggressive stances in terms of the system design, right? So likewise, in healthcare system, first of all, we know that the broader consensus is that AI systems are biased. But we know that humans are also biased, right? So if you talk to economists who specialize in economics of AI, they will tell you that, well, AI is horrible, but humans can be worse. And AI can get better over time, but humans, we do not necessarily get better over time, right? So I think the trust is really two-way street, really bi-directional. We really have to think about, when we think about if we can possibly trust the AI, well, it's really about if you can trust the AI is being developed ethically, responsibly. If AI being used responsibly, ethically, it's actually about human trust, right? So when I talk about whether AI can trust humans, that's really about whether AI developer can trust the AI users. Well, the short answer is that you shouldn't, right? Because one of the engineering principles is that you should definitely treat your users as people who will not follow instructions, who will completely misunderstand the situation. You should try to develop foolproof systems, right? Because when you develop a foolproof system, essentially you consider users as untrustworthy, right? So I think that's really really key here, is that it's not really much about trust between AI and humans. It's really about trust between humans.
That's an excellent point. It's really about the trust between people and the people who develop the AI system. Wonderful. Then for the system that the people developed, what kinds of decisions should be delegated to, say, an AI system versus a person, a worker, human worker?
That's excellent question. Obviously, the answer is it always depends, right? So if you think about the kind of 5 use cases we discussed earlier, one of the use cases I mentioned was revenue optimization. So this is becoming more and more popular. You have increasingly, you see that hospitals use AI scribe as raw input, use that to generate codes and use that as a basis for billing. So insurance companies, they are seeing more and more claims that seems to be driven by the use of AI. They also figure out how to deal with the situation, right? So back to your question, should that be dedicated to AI? Should that be dedicated to humans? I think this should be both, right? So I think it seems to me seems to be a very good use case if we're using AI scribe responsibly, because it takes a lot of manual labor, to figure out the right codes. But then the problem with using AI is that, first of all, it's not reliable. There's a New England Journal of Medicine AI paper reports a lot of errors in terms of using AI to figure out the codes from inpatient visits. So number two, even if AI is perfectly reliable, when we actually automate that coding process, again, the issue is that humans may take advantage of that. You could have a situation that hospital leaders may be instructing physicians to talk to that patient in a certain way, because that's the way you can maximize revenue from that visit, even if you are providing exactly the same care. So I want to say that I think the part about automation, about efficiency improvement, I like the idea of delegating the process, the documentation to AI, but I wouldn't fully dedicate that to AI. I think we should still have humans in the loop. But you also have situations where even if you don't have humans in the loop, you can have humans over the loop, or something called humans on the loop, meaning that you still have this fully automated process, but you still have humans who are watching it, monitoring that. So that's called humans on the loop or humans over the loop, right? So if you want me to be even more confusing, I can also give you another term called humans after the loop, meaning that you do not even have humans monitoring the process, but just every once in a while, every few weeks, every few months, you look at the patterns, look at the processes, you try to diagnose the system, trying to figure out whether the system can be improved. So basically, that's like ex post improvement. But regardless whether you're doing humans in the loop, humans over the loop, or slash humans on the loop, or humans after the loop, humans should be there, right? And humans will always be there.
Wonderful. I learned various terms about the loops, over the loop, after the loops. Wonderful, very good.
Or you can jump off the loop, on and off the loop, right? So
on and off the loop. Excellent. Then in the previously you mentioned that the AI system was developed by people and they should subscribe and conform to ethics and people's expectation. So in your experience, in your observations, what kind of challenges typically arise in aligning the algorithmic recommendations and such professional ethics or some humanitarian perspective?
Well, I mean the algorithms recommendations, suppose we are talking about the algorithm used for medical decisions, could be diagnosis, could be treatment. I think the challenge really boils down to the central conflict between the upstream and downstream, right? The upstream developers and downstream users, right? As the upstream developers, they have liability concerns. And when you have liability concerns, you have the tendency to make the systems overly sensitive. But it's not always the case, because all these AI systems, eventually they got tuned by hospital leaders, by those working groups, usually consisting of physicians, nurses, hospital leaders, and technicians, IT departments. So depending on the goals of these hospitals leaders try to achieve, the systems AI systems are tuned differently. And those goals may be different from clinical goals, clinical objectives. So I think the key issue right now, key alignment issue is really about what are we trying to achieve? Eventually, AI is a goal. AI is a goal for AI is a tool used by hospital leaders to achieve certain goals they couldn't normally achieve, right? Because in hospital setting is a very different setting in the sense that physicians, they are the ones with ultimate authority. They are the ones who ultimately decide how resources should be used. So hospital leaders and also policymakers, they cannot directly influence that decision, but they try everything to influence that decision making. So to me, that organizational, alignment or misalignment is actually the central challenge.
Right. Yeah. So Tinglong, you have painted a vivid picture of how AI is applied in healthcare operations. So, but let's say AI has, of course, various ripple effects. Some of them are intended, some of them are unintended. So let's talk about those consequences, implications in your experience. So, of course, in healthcare, efficiency is a headline topic. But what has AI really affected the productivity in hospitals, in the healthcare system?
Well, I want to speak from my own research. I actually did this study about how AI improve physician productivity. We did a randomized controlled trial in Bangladesh back in 2022. The study was published in Nature Digital Medicine in 2023. What we found was that when you have an AI augmented workflow, in the case of Bangladesh, it improved physician productivity by 40%. So basically, with the same amount of resources, the same configuration, only difference was that you add AI as a gatekeeper to figure out which the patient pathway you are able to see 40% more patients. And in this particular case, the patients are diabetic patients. And the AI tool was used to screen them for retinopathy. Retinopathy is a sight-threatening disease, right? So it happens to 1 in 3 diabetic patients, and if left untreated, it could lead to blindness. So essentially, what we are saying is that you can use AI to really unlock the potential of healthcare delivery. You can see more patients. You can prevent 40% more patients from getting blind. So from that end, I think that's quite encouraging. But I should say that was such a positive, such an inspiring setting because there were a lot of preconditions. So the first condition was that the AI tool itself was FDA cleared. So it's an autonomous AI tool. It's approved by FDA, and it's also in the US. It got reimbursement from CMS, from private insurance companies. It's really well validated. It has undergone human subject evaluation before it was cleared by FDA. But I cannot say the same for most of other AI tools. So we did another study about FDA cleared medical AI tools. We found vast majority of them have never ever undergone any form of clinical testing. And there's a lot of recalls, right? So I would say that if you use AI tools appropriately, and you are using the right AI tools, there's a way to improve productivity. And so because we could actually, the way for us to improve productivity is to tackle the bottleneck in the system. In this case, the bottleneck was the physician capacity. But you could also think of other settings. The bottleneck could be the reimbursement, could be administrative capacity. And with those, so the whole point is that we should be able to use AI where it can freeze the flow, where it can help us eliminate the bottleneck, or shift the bottleneck to where we have more resources.
Right. So the AI not only improves efficiency, but also increases the access. You mentioned a very significant number, 40%. Then in this process, you also caution people to pay attention to some unintended consequences, and you started to allude to some conditions. Could you tell us a bit more about those unintended consequences, please? And how we should pay attention to those.
Excellent. I think I'm looking at the chart. I think one of the intended consequences was highlighted by Adrian Mars is that clinical expertise traditionally being built through technical knowledge. Now, when people use AI more and more, you could have this potential unintended consequence of skill building erosion, right? Because if imagine someone they rely on AI for most of the cases, which by the way is already happening in many medical schools these days, which is not unlike our MBA education, by the way, right? So then that's the unintended consequence be that people do not utilize their own skills as much as they should or that they need to maintain the kind of active knowledge and also this ability to exercise their own skills. So we could see the erosion of human capital. So that's number one. And earlier, obviously, we mentioned the other unintended consequences would be that when a doctor uses AI a lot, that could also shape the peer perception of their skill level, which is a very big deal because even though we say that our medical doctors are the best and the brightest, but even among best and brightest, you still want to be the best and the brightest among the best and the brightest, right? So how can anyone differentiate themselves against such a competitive pool? how do people make a name for self? How do people gain other people's attention? Some people's other people's really recognitions, right? So we are talking about a highly competitive population. All of decisions are actually driven by that competition. So when AI make it harder for people to signal their fundamental expertise, their skills, and then people have to look to other ways, right, to separate themselves, to build a reputation for themselves. So I'm not saying that's the only issue that only thing matters to doctors, but it's something really matters to them. So we have to pay a close attention to that. And obviously the liability issue would be another issue. And because fundamentally, when you use AI, it also creates a lot of additional data points. A lot of information can be created. Such information can be used against physicians, against the hospitals. Well, there are also cases that can be used to the advantage of providers, but we also have to pay attention to the liability implications.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for including Adrian, our audience questions as part of the conversation. You know, Tinglong is really a pro. He's a very good expert in this area. Well, Tinglong, previously you mentioned a bottleneck, right? Bottleneck certainly reminds all of us of a service processes. And services are naturally a very important part in service science. Then the natural question is, how do we align an AI system, AI application to coordinate with a current workflow to integrate or redesign the workflow to maximize the potential of AI and people collaboration?
That's an excellent question. I see most of us here in this Zoom call are operational professors. So I think that I also think this happens to be the most valuable perspective when you think about workflow. We are truly workflow experts. So one of our really powerful weapons in workflow analysis is just really figure out the capacity, figure out utilization, figure out the bottleneck, because only when your tools tackle that bottleneck can it actually unlock the potential of the service system design, right? So let me give you an example here. Earlier, I told Tom about this tool used for diabetic retinopathy screening. So it's called a Luminetics Core. So it's a tool cleared by FDA in 2018 as an autonomous AI tool. I've been working with this company for a long time. So one of the key design principles is that where you should use that AI in workflow depends on where the bottleneck is, right? So in the United States, the challenge that we have here is that diabetic patients, they do see their primary care doctors, but they just do not have that capacity. They just do not have the resources to see the specialists, right? Because the screening process really consists of two steps. Step one, you see the PCP. Step two, you see the specialist, right? So what happened in the US is that step two is the bottleneck. Step one is not the bottleneck, right? So the key insight here is that if 80% of patients see their primary care doctor, but not only 15% of them see the specialist, then we should probably providing that care at the primary care doctor's office, right? So that's precisely what we are doing in the US, is that in the US, this AI tool is most powerful when you deploy it in the primary care doctor's office. Suddenly, primary care doctors have this one skill, this one service offering they didn't have before, which is to screen patients for retinopathy. And even when they do not have the training, do they have the tools, and they do not have the bandwidth, right? So now, if you are going to deploy this in a developing country, such as Bangladesh, so earlier I mentioned the study in Bangladesh, the tool, you cannot do it in the clinic, cannot do it in the primary care doctor's office, because very few patients see their primary care doctors, if they have a primary care doctor at all, right? So what happens is that if people, they feel they might have this discomfort with their vision, with their eyes, what do they do? They go to an eye hospital directly, right? So then eye hospitals become very, very crowded. And basically here, the bottleneck, again, is eye hospital, is the same bottleneck, but you should put AI where it can make a difference, where you can free the flow, which is at the reception, of those hospitals, at the entrance of the hospitals. If we put the AI where people enter the hospital or where people just enter the hospital, you can screen them, give them immediate results instead of waiting for hours, or days, or even weeks. So people get reassurance that they don't have the disease. They can go home with peace of mind, or they have the condition. They should be seen by specialists immediately, right? So we should be able to deploy AI where the patients are, and so that we can truly free the flow, we can truly help tackling the system bottleneck.
So before we move on to the last segment about the future of AI, Joy asked a very good follow-up question. How can these potentially negative outcomes in terms of physician learning and erosion of expertise and reputation be turned around to create synergies between physicians and AI? Tinglong, would you like to take a crack at this, please?
I love that. I love the question, you know, because people like to paint a pessimistic dark picture, but you know, how AI is going to make everything worse, is going to create a lot of issues. What I don't hear is the kind of questions raised by Joy, is that how can we fix that? How can we make it better? I really appreciate the positive spirit. But on the other hand, I should also say that I don't really have very good answers. I think we should collectively explore potential answers to such questions to really make them better. So for example, in terms of physician learning, I think we face some challenges in our MBA classrooms, right? So we know that MBA students these days, we don't blame them because it's just so easy, right? So easy to copy assignment questions using ChatGPT and got the answers and submit it back to us, right? And we know that it's too easy for reviewers to upload the paper to ChatGPT and generate a review, right? So I think, first of all, we should admit, we should be really honest about what's really going on in the MBA classrooms, you know, in the paper review process, and also on hospital floors. On hospital floors, we know that more and more trainees, including medical students, residents, fellows, and basically they cannot, these days, they do not present a case without checking that with generative AI tools. It could be ChatGPT, could be Claude, could be approved tools such as Open Evidence. But whichever tool they use, it's going to mean that we have a different workflow than before. We cannot pretend the world really functions, really operates like it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. We cannot just say that I wish people don't have access to ChatGPT. It's not going to happen. So we will never go back to that pre-ChatGPT world anymore. We have to first admit this is happening. Then we have to figure out what we can do, how to face it, how do we deal with that, right? So if we know our students, they have a tendency of using AI tools to solve this kind of case assignments, to solve this kind of technical assignments, maybe we should give them bigger challenges. We should try to get them to solve real world problems, to use AI as a tool to do a lot of active learning, to address real world problems. And, you know, I think it's not a bad thing that people can use AI to do Python coding, right? Because that's awesome, right? But now they can find it, they can build a lot of things they wasn't able to build before. Likewise, I think for medicine, we have to change the way how medical education is delivered. We cannot presume people don't have access to AI tool. We should assume they have access to AI tool, but then we have every reason to expect the medical student to basically to think, to act in a way, you know, almost like a medical resident or fellow. Likewise, we should expect a medical fellow to act like an attending. So, right, we just need to increase the bar. We just need to increase that expectation and push people to truly exercise the brain, to truly develop their skills, developing skills they didn't have. So I want to connect this back to the retinopathy screening story. So the reason is actually a very, very good use case, because when you put the AI in a primary care doctor's office, you allow them to do something they wasn't able to do before. Sure, it will take away some of the practices from specialists, for sure. But if we only have a 15% screening rate in this country versus 80% screening rate in the UK, we're actually creating bigger market, right? For the specialists. But then for the PCP, now they can do things they weren't able to do before. So if we think along that way, I think AI really offers super exciting upskilling opportunity if we redesign our workflow, redesign our services differently. On the other hand, if we pretend people are still doing things the old way, then we'll be in big trouble.
Yeah. Very good. So Tinglong, we have been talking, and then certainly AI has been reshaping healthcare today. Now let's step behind and zoom out a little bit to foresee the future. You have been the editor of the special issue of Service Science in AI Applications, and you've been serving on various editorial roles with our flagship journals. So in your experience, what are some most exciting research opportunities in this area about the healthcare and AI applications?
Thank you so much. Obviously, I'm going to be biased. First of all, I'm very pro AI per se. Anywhere I go, people ask me, what should I be researching about? My answer was, you should drop everything, just study AI. So, obviously I'm very biased. I really think AI is really such an exciting space. Everyone should study it because it is being used. But more importantly, AI really exposes humanity. When we talk about AI, when we study AI, we're actually studying ourselves, right? We're trying to understand what humanity is all about. What really separates humans from machines, right? What really essence? What are really values that our profession, by that I mean operations management, our profession offers to business, to society. So I think AI really challenges us to the core. So whatever research problem that excites you, you should absolutely pursue that. But my personal view would be that really figure out how the rapid deployment of AI changes human relationship, changes the trust, change organization dynamics, changes the learning, changes skill building, and also the exciting questions as a result of AI. It's not like such issues did not exist before. They're always there. Humanity, I don't think humanity has changed much. I think what happens is just that AI intensifies them. AI really put us on the spot, and now we have to face them, right? So we know that the challenge with eroding our skill building. We know that the medical education curriculum has been outdated. We know our MBA classrooms definitely do not fit into the need that our graduates need for them to thrive in society, in businesses. But we just keep kicking the can down the road, right? We just pretend, okay, if I don't have to change the design of my operations syllabus, why would I do it this year? I'll do it next year. I can work, one blink is already 10 years, 20 years already passed. So I think now it's really have to face the inevitable. We really have to change ourselves, to really be honest about ourselves, right? So I think that itself really presents a lot of exciting research opportunities, and we have to face. And the other part, because you gave me this timeline, 10 to 15 years. So meaning we're talking about the kind of issues facing us between 2035 to 2040. And so if my math is correct, so I think we have to really think carefully about the possibility of artificial superintelligence, meaning we have superhuman level of AI. To a certain extent, it's already there in some specialized fields, in some specialized areas, but there is a non-zero possibility that AI can surpass us across almost all the human dimensions in terms of intelligence, not in terms of everything, in terms of intelligence. So then what's left for us to do as a profession? So there has been very lively, very active research topic is economics. But I also feel like as a profession, we also have to think about how the superhuman AI is going to change the service design, service delivery. Right now, we're happy with watching all the robots, right? So when we eat, at the restaurants, seeing them delivering stuff with tables. But what if they can do more? And how is that going to change where we think about AI, right? We think about AI as we think of ourselves as users of AI. We think of AI tools as uses, right? But what if you have the other possibility? What if we actually become AI becomes the user, we become the user, right? So what if we become resources of AI, right? So I sounds really ridiculous, really crazy, but I think we should dream big. We should look at some really big research challenges.
Mm-hmm. That's the very inspirational vision, Tinglong. I like your vision that technology should connect back to humanity and the service itself. So now let's open the floor to the audience. Please feel free to type in the chat any questions that you want to ask Professor Tinglong Dai, and we'll bring you into the discussion.
I'm just looking at the comment from Tarkan Tang. I'm laughing because this is precisely the similar title. I think this was back in 2020. We did a brainstorming challenge. We're saying that maybe a few years down the road, the question is, do we need maybe we should incorporate humans into the workflow, right? So
very interesting. Yeah, and Paul asked, feeling economy, Huang and Rust argue that humans are feeling beings and should specialize on jobs such as that, which perhaps AI doesn't do. What are your thoughts on that?
That's very interesting thought. And well, I think first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think today's AI is really built upon artificial neural networks, and they would really inspire how humans make intuitive decisions. So we are building intuitive machines, not reasoning machines. Well, they claim they can do reasoning, but this is mostly intuitive machines. I mean, in some way, I feel AI tools are pretty good at feeding things, pretty good at getting our human intuition. And so, but I do agree with the general idea that there should be more of emphasis about the emotional dimension, about the human's capability of, for example, we're capable of loving, which is very important. Every talk I talk about AI, I always talk about love, because loving is actually one of the important abilities we humans have, right? Because for you to love something or some way, there has to be a sense of ownership. You feel like, this is my friend, this is my colleague, this is my profession, this is my field, this is my journal, right? So that kind of sense of ownership is very important. I don't think AI can get that kind of sense of ownership anytime soon. But love also means this kind of moral urgency, even moral outrage, meaning that if I see something is not right, something needs to be fixed, I actually feel angry about it. I'm not sure AI tools are capable of being angry, to be honest with you, right? I know they're not that funny, but I don't think they're not angry. But I think anger is very important. We should be able to angry about things, about injustices, for us to be able to fix things. So, but I do broadly agree with this point about importance of emotional dimension of humanity.
Yeah. And Takan asked a very good question about operational transparency. He asked, what level of transparency should patients expect when their doctor relies on AI? Should disclosure be mandatory? This question is Gen AI generated. Thank you for the disclosure.
So this is a very good one. I mean, regardless it's generated by AI, by human, this is a very good question. So yes, this is a very good disclosure. I mean, I really appreciate this sense of transparency. I think the answer, I do not think disclosure is always should be mandatory. Let me tell you why. Because as a patient, when you see a doctor, you're actually in this vulnerable situation. And when you're in a vulnerable situation, it helps. It actually, you need to be taken care of by someone who is in a relatively healthy situation, can give you the calm, give you confidence. So in fact, there's quite a lot of debate with the medical community about whether you should disclose to a patient if you have any health condition. For example, if you're an oncologist, you also have a cancer. Is it the right thing for you to do, to disclose your own health concern to a patient? Well, I think a lot of people saying that maybe you shouldn't, because being a patient, we like to think of our doctors as superhuman beings, at least in the health dimension. We don't really like to see them. We claim we like to see authenticity, but when we actually see authentic expressions, it might actually ruin our service expression, right? So I think this community are people really good at designing service experiences, and a lot of really small things can trigger a stigma or can trigger negative feelings toward seemingly harmless things. The other example in the medical literature was when a doctor eats an apple, right? Imagine you run to your doctor who is eating an apple in the lobby, in the hallway. This is something very harmless, right? And I love apples. I think I love people who eat apples, but they actually found that doctors, when doctors eat apples, are also being seen by patients. The patient's trust over the doctor significantly reduced. Even have nothing to do with their professional skills. So I would say we want to be careful, and we should absolutely disclose to patients if you're using GenAI to collect the private information, if you're sending the message, connect the message to other systems. But there are cases you're using AI almost like you're using calculator, using a tool to double check your understanding of a concept or certain situation or the literature. For example, this tool called Open Evidence. Open Evidence is really just like Wikipedia for doctors, right? But it's trained on trusted medical sources. And they really read millions of papers published every year. They provide more information than any possible doctor can possibly read, can understand. I think you should use open evidence, but I don't think you should be telling patients I'm looking up open evidence and before I diagnose your condition.
Interesting. And apple a day keeps the doctor away. So
that's probably
stay
why.
away from the doctor who eats the
I think
apple himself. Yeah, and I think Tinglong brought up a very good point. The doctors need to be intentional about what they share. What's the purpose of sharing that piece of information for? And finally, I think Alan has a similar question. He is somewhat concerned about the back propagation of confidential patient information into LLMs in general. And what are your thoughts, Tinglong?
That's a very good question. First of all, we should absolutely be concerned about leakage of sensitive information. Could be patient information, could be physician information, could be financial information. We should be absolutely be sensitive and be aware of that. So the Hopkins AI lab system I shared earlier, it's essentially an offline AI, Gen AI system. So when Hopkins providers use the system, the information will not be shared with OpenAI or with Anthropic or with Meta. So that's very important design consideration. Now, the downside of that kind of design is that it's definitely a weaker system compared to the ChatGPT system you and I use. It's weaker. It doesn't have a lot of wheels and bezels, even though it has a lot of frontier models. But we should be willing to sacrifice a little bit performance and in exchange of confidentiality and security of system design. This is something we should never compromise for ethical reason, for legal reason, or for any reason, right? I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Tinglong, can we take the last question?
Sure, absolutely.
From Xinran Hao. AI can also be used directly by patients. For example, before visiting a doctor, a patient could describe their symptoms to an AI system and receive a preliminary assessment. With the help of AI, the information gap between patients and physicians becomes smaller. What impact might this narrowing information gap have on the healthcare system and on the quality of care?
So this is a very good question because the medical profession has always been struggling with the system. Even back in the 1960s, 80s, doctors didn't like patients who went to the library and read the whole book about their condition, right? But those patients were rare. And then we have Google that, then you have patients, everyone who basically Google themselves before they see a doctor, right? So doctors don't like patients who Google themselves. And now, obviously, my estimation, maybe half of the patients have already run by ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini before they see a doctor. So it's in some ways we are pretty knowledgeable. We're pretty knowledgeable about ourselves we're just not knowledgeable about medical expertise, right? But now with the help of these AI tools, we actually know a lot about our own health condition. We know a lot. We read a lot of medical articles through the links shared by generative AI, right? So somehow patients have to pretend they don't know much as they actually do, right? So I think, you know, my big concern with the system is that there's too much pretense. So the doctors pretend that the patients don't run their condition by ChatGPT. So patients pretend they don't know much medical knowledge than they actually do, right? So people still pretend we are still practicing medicine as if this is 1980s or 1990s or year 2021, 2022. So, but the whole world has been different. So we have to be honest. We have to be honest about the situation, about the information asymmetry. Well, information asymmetry has been front and central to healthcare operations, healthcare, service design. But now, what if information asymmetry is not as much as people think? Or what if we have a different kind of information asymmetry, meaning that I know something, but I don't want you to know that I know, right? I think it's going to be very challenging kind of information environment, but we have to be honest. We have to be honest about what's actually going on, and we have to recalibrate our service design to reflect the amount of information we actually know, we actually have access to.
Very good. We have seen today that AI has been transforming how AI is applied in healthcare operations, but we also seen that it affects the very nature of decision-making process, with both its promises and challenges and complexity. Tinglong, thank you so much for your very vivid examples and your very insightful points. And thank you all, everyone, for joining us today. I think today's session reminds us that service science has a very important mission ahead of us. That is, we need to design a system that can help people and AI work together to bring patients better outcomes. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And that's the end of today's Service Science Online Forum. And next forum, Wei Wei will be moderating in December.
Thanks so much, Tom. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.